This is Jonathan Ferguson, the Keeper of Firearms Artillery at the Royal Armouries Museum in the UK, which houses a collection of thousands of iconic weapons from throughout history. And on this week's episode, we're showing Jonathan more of the weapons from the zombie survival game, DayZ.
The Obrez. I knew this was coming as soon as I saw the Mosin. Excellent. That's the best use for one of these.
Make sure to subscribe to check out our previous episode on the guns of DayZ, and let us know what other games you'd like to see us cover in the comment section down below. Right, over to Jonathan.
It's an over and under rifle. I'm struggling to think of any over and under 308 rifles. I'm sure they exist. It has proper rifle sights on it. Bit of a strange choice, but not necessarily for the game, but it's hard to think of an application these days where you wouldn't, for a rifle, where you wouldn't want a magazine bolt action or a semi-auto. This gives you two fast shots. So there's probably a niche for this kind of thing. And if it's all you find in a zombie-infested world, then great. It's two shots, which is better than no shots.
In-game, it spawns in like small villages and towns and in hunting stands.
Okay.
Imply that it's obviously a abandoned hunting weapon.
It's an interesting one in terms of sighting and range, because the barrel's being positioned one above the other at the sort of range a rifle is intended for. Your point of impact is going to be potentially different without adjusting the sights, which are not super adjustable by the look of them. The AUR, the thinly veiled AUG, or AUG if you prefer. Barrel's looking quite short there, and that muzzle device is unusual. Of course, the famous advantage of bullpup firearms is that you have a short overall length with a relatively long barrel. So it's pretty uncommon to see an AUG with a barrel that short, unless it's maybe the 9mm conversion, which I believe I've shown before on this series. Of course, you can shorten a bullpup still further. The SA80 carbine, there are shorter barrels available for the AUG. Standard muzzle device is this slightly weird, but standard on AUG variants, tapered bird cage. So the actual body is tapered down, but the muzzle ring effectively is the same diameter as the rear of the flash suppressor, so it gives it that distinctive look. So apart from the non-standard barrel, it's a pretty good AUG, I think. This, I think, is the game's generic take on a modernized AUG. So it has the quite distinctive angled receiver into the Picatinny rail on the top, which is characteristic of the Thales EF88/F90, the Australian, the Auster new generation, or more recent AUG variant, but it doesn't have the quite distinctive cooling holes in the receiver. I think it's a kind of it's their basic model that's been upgraded to resemble the F90, I think. And of course, the real story there is that this thing came out in 1977 and has no ability to mount, well, anything really to it. The optic is integral to the receiver, so if you want to upgrade it, you've got to replace your whole front end, and you probably have to do some surgery to the lower receiver, effectively, rear receiver as well. So this was extremely space age in 1977, but 20-30 years later, in need of an upgrade. This is looking a lot like the DS Arms modern version of the FAL with that reinforced Picatinny upper receiver. They're based on Austrian SA58 receivers, but they have that modified upper. It's a little strange that we're seeing it without a buttstock sometimes. The fixed stock version of the FAL needs the buttstock to function, a bit like the AR-15. There needs to be a buffer in the buttstock for it to function. The folding buttstock FAL, and this may be where they've kind of got a bit confused, has the return spring moved inside the body, inside the receiver of the rifle. So with that variant, I guess you could potentially have it without a buttstock and maybe with a fixed stock added, but the folding stocks on those are built in, so you'd have to do some gunsmithing to make that work. That's nice. That stoppage there, he's struggling to get the bolt open. That's very rare to see. I guess survival games are more geared toward stoppages, guns wearing out, maintenance, that kind of thing. Probably quite realistic to slap the weapon like that when it's not cocking, but it's not really going to help. The only thing that's going to help there is if you bang the butt hard on the ground, inertia will help you unstick that mechanism in theory. This is an interesting one. This particular variant of the Ruger standard, I could not find. However, we do have a couple of suppressed Rugers, very similar. So as depicted, this is a self-loading 22 or 22 long rifle pistol with a built-in suppressor. Very, very quiet, although I've not fired one myself. I think the sound, the relative sound as depicted seems about right. If anything, it might be a little too loud for something of this nature.
The game does do a good job giving guns like this utility as well, because they might take a few shots to take down a zombie or a survivor unless you shoot them in the head. But if you shoot anything bigger in a built-up area, just so many zombies are on you so fast.
Which makes sense. But virtually every zombie media we've ever seen, they at least have human level hearing. This is where suppressed weapons really would come into their own. And there is a trade-off in terms of lethality. Something zombie fiction never really engages with is how much brain damage is required. Well, having said that, the original Romero movies remove the head or destroy the brain. So a Walking Dead shiv in the skull or even a 22 bullet passing through isn't necessarily going to destroy the brain. We can assume from the way zombies behave that they are mainly brainstem. So the very horrifying prospect that I haven't seen done. Yeah, the classic scene, shoot them in the body, nothing happens, they keep coming. You shoot them in the head, they immediately drop. What if they didn't? Now, obviously, with rifle caliber bullets, that's not really going to be a concern. But something as small as this, yeah, I wouldn't. But for a game, you kind of got to have that hitbox in the head that just lights out. I get that. I might normally be disappointed, frankly, as a gamer, to see something as relatively weak as this. Relatively, still very lethal. But I think with the suppressor and the gameplay that we're dealing with here, that's an excellent choice. The Mosin Nagant can run the gamut from a beautiful piece of craftsmanship and engineering to really not very good, like a lot of firearms can. It's absolutely prime for a game like this because there are a ton of them around. They were extremely cheap and available. And being a full power infantry rifle, 7.62x54, it's one of the more powerful rounds out there, still in military use today. Even the rifles are showing up in at least paramilitary or militia use today, and the round is still the same round used in the SVD and the PKM. It's absolutely going to do the job for these undead freaks. The recoil is maybe a bit low as depicted. It's not excessive with the Mosin, but you definitely know you fired it, and the whole gun should be moving into the shooter in that external view. Even in first person, it ought to shift towards you sharply under recoil. The Obrez. I knew this was coming as soon as I saw the Mosin. I like what they've done with the representation of that. The file marks, the saw cuts, I should say, the hesitation marks of a saw going through wood and steel. That's well done, well modeled. I don't think you'd be able to, with a scope, hold this on target at that distance without significant movement. This thing is incredibly short. Excellent. That's the best use for one of these.
Knew there would be distaste for it as soon as I made it. And honestly, that was cathartic for me because I was able to find a Mosin pretty easily, and it took me bloody ages to find a hacksaw. So
I give points as well for the idea that you have to get an actual hacksaw and an actual Mosin and actually cut bits off it. I think that's really good. The utility of doing it is questionable. I can see why you might cut the barrel off, but much like with a sawn-off shotgun, keep the buttstock. What you gain from making it who are you concealing it from? Zombies don't care whether you have a gun or not. Okay, other survivors. But it's not worth sawing off the buttstock for that cool pistol-style Obrez look. The historicity of these things is debated. We won't get into it. We're not talking about history. They exist as a meme at the very least, and there are stories of them existing for tunnel fighting in the war. If you're going to do it, bin the scope, have it as essentially a very close range weapon with a lot of power behind it. Even then, why not have a shotgun? Interesting. Specifically named a P1. Anyway, this is, well, it's a P38. I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, surely that's a P38. And it is. Now, the P38 was renamed P1 after the Second World War. A lot of the numbers for firearms started again, nearly all of them, started again from scratch. I guess, a break with the past. But a lot of them were the same guns. MG42s, P38, renamed P1, and they essentially the same pistol. So this is a P38 marked gun with the aluminium frame, which was a late war thing into the post-war period. The one in the game is marked P1. There is no difference. They would be treated the same in service. But the P38 is, in game terms, a bit overlooked, so it's nice to see it here. Still a capable pistol. You know, it's limited to 8 rounds, single stack, but right up until the 80s, at least, a single stack 9mm was still somewhat capable, albeit they had already extended capacity a bit. 8 rounds is very much on the low side for a self-loading pistol. We have the Browning High Power, of course, already in existence with 13 rounds. So why would you not want that? I'd be looking for this to offset a decent amount of power with that low capacity of 8 rounds. I'm not sure how that plays out in the game. Very distinctive looking pistol. And of course, Megatron. That's an interesting single round load there. Ooh, I think you probably could do that. That's probably based on someone's real reload, in fact, but it'd be bloody tricky. So here we are with, and you can see the fore end on this is pretty much identical to the one in front of me, albeit that's brown. This is modern black polymer. That reload though, so if we take the magazine off, the recoil spring on this is pretty powerful. So we're taking it, this is a dummy round, it even says dummy on it. So we're pulling back the charging handle. We are trying to place a round in the chamber and releasing it forward. That's the most likely outcome. I'm not saying that that's impossible. It would just take an absolute ton of practice and a lot of strength in the hand as well to pull that off. A more realistic way to do a single load would probably be this. Reach up from below in the chamber, you hold back the working parts in the shoulder. Of course, there's no buttstock on the one in the game. You thumb it in, as it were, let go of it, and it's chambered. Without either trapping your fingers, breaking your fingers, or shooting yourself or anything else you don't wish to destroy, I'd be fascinated to see if somebody can replicate that, or maybe they already have.
Would it, in theory, be easier to do that on an AK? Because I think what they've done is they've taken it might be the same animation from the AK and put it on the Saiga for obvious reasons.
I'd have to try that. I think it would have problems all of its own, but I can't imagine they made that up. So I suspect someone has managed to perfect that with an AK, and they've borrowed it for this, which would be even harder, I think. In theory, a pretty ideal anti-zombie weapon. Relatively short barrel, semi-automatic, fast shots if you miss one or you have multiple zombies to shoot. Really destructive potential from a shotgun round, of course, close range. And Saigas are relatively reliable for semi-automatic, magazine-fed shotguns. The reason why they're favoured in competition shooting. Skorpion, CR61 instead of VZ or ZOR 61. I'm not convinced by the holding open there. I don't even see the hold open being actuated, and getting around into the chamber from there is... I would not want to try and single load this at all. Very awkward, very narrow ejection port on the top. Very hard to assist around into the chamber on its own. It's not designed to feed that way. Good rate of fire, good sound. Looks pretty good. Got our folding buttstock there. I was thinking maybe the angle's a bit low, but actually I think it's fine. The ejection's straight up. Absolutely correct. It can only go straight up. Some slightly weird recoil going on with some of these weapons. This being a case in point. Very little recoil on this thing at all. All you're really going to struggle with is on automatic, some muzzle rise, of course. But in this case, the whole weapon seems to twist very slightly, like this. If the stock were folded and you're shooting it like this, you're going to get that kind of twist. But with the stock deployed, that recoil impulse should now be back and maybe under cumulative recoil a little bit up and to the right, but not, the weapon should no longer twist in the hand like that.
There was a moment where I was firing and my suppressor wore out and it just started shooting at that, like the normal volume.
Oh, that's weird. That's not really a thing. Actual wear? I mean, they wear from, you know, high pressure, hot, corrosive gases being put through them repeatedly. They don't wear out like a barrel wears out with direct metal on metal contact. If a bullet strikes a baffle, there's going to be damage and suppressors can be rendered less effective because there'll be a bigger hole around the bullet. And if you get a really bad baffle strike, you can blow the whole suppressor off the end of the gun. I understand the need to model wear on objects in survival games. It's not suddenly going to go. You're going to get a very cumulative increase in volume as especially if it has wipes in it, so rubber wipes that the bullet has to pass through. As the hole is enlarged and worn out, then you'll get more of a report that way. As it gets dirty, in theory, it will get slightly louder as it becomes a bit less effective. Slightly over time, maybe. Like if you never clean the thing and just shoot it till it's literally full of carbon, it's going to start to be less effective. It's not going to suddenly go from pew pew to bang bang in the way that just did. Nice that the iron sights are still usable, is the point of a high scope mount like that at this era. Not great for the actual scope because it's not coinciding with the bore, and you're going to have, at a certain distance, your point of impact will be wrong. So we've got a PU scope here. It's a real name. And it says damaged. And sure enough, we look through it and it's pretty crazed. Quite a nice effect, actually. I mean, that's some serious damage. That's not just cracked. That's fractured, like the surface of the glass has fractured away, which means it's taken a serious impact from the side there. Anything that would damage the lens that much would have distorted the body of the scope as well, quite frankly. I think just a couple of cracks would be realistic. Of course, I think what they're going for here is actual obscuring your vision with the damage. Ah, the VSS. Still don't have one. Of course, you have to question how a rare Soviet/Russian suppressed assault rifle, if you want to call it that, is available in this American setting.
It's based in a fictional Eastern European
country.
Okay,
we are in Eastern Europe.
I think the only place to find things like the VSS, the Val is in the game as well, is in the military bases in the game, or helicopters will randomly crash with troops in, and sometimes they'll have rare weapons like this.
I take it back. That is a really nice touch. So it's in the right part of the world, and it's the opposite of some of the Call of Duty games where you've got incredibly rare guns spawning everywhere. Have it spawn in an area that makes sense. I fully applaud that. And this is not a unicorn gun per se. They are out there in quantity in military service, so why not?
I'd actually never heard of the SSG-82 before this.
It's part of a series of Steyr bolt-action rifles, some of which we do have, but this is an unusual variant in being chambered for 5.45, standard Soviet and Russian, Ukrainian assault rifle cartridge. There are, of course, lots of some bolt-action rifles chambered for intermediate rifle cartridges. They're not incredibly common because normally the slow rate of fire of a bolt action lends itself to, you may as well go for something with a bit more power, but there are uses for such a thing. In universe, you probably want it so that you can use the local military ammo that's going to be available in quantity in theory, but with a lot more precision, because you're limiting yourself rate of fire wise drastically, and at the sort of effective range you're going to be taking out zombies with to not waste ammo, for example. You're probably going to want an AK, because you certainly don't have to worry about needing a full bore, as it were, rifle cartridge for zombies. If you're scoring a headshot with 5.45, they are definitely destroying the brain. Thanks for watching, guys. Those were some guns from DayZ, I'm gonna call it, because I'm British, damn it. Definitely check out, if you'd like to, our YouTube channel here at the Royal Armouries. We have other social media channels as well, but you'll find more guns and more me if you like that sort of thing. on YouTube. We also have some actual museums. If you're in the UK or you're based in the UK, please do come and check us out. We'll see you again here on this channel next week.